Hi, everyone. This is Dr.KatherineT.Kelly, and I want to offer you a really neat and powerful tool in order for you to go back in this lifetime and collect parts of yourself that might have been left back in traumatic events and difficult experiences, or just key junctures of your life or rites of passage. There's all different times and ways that we might feel fragmented and might feel like there was a part of us that was left behind. That can be a traumatic experience. That could be, it really could be anything. And there's lots and lots of psychological therapy processes that you can go through. There's parts therapy, there's internal family systems, there's all these different ways to integrate through psychological kinds of things. But I also want to help you understand how important it is to integrate those parts from a soul perspective, because I talk about the fact that there's these three levels of healing. There's intellectual healing, where we have to figure out what happened and how it happened to make us feel the way we do. So it's the intellectual part of, okay, click, there it is. That's what made that happen. But then we have to do the emotional healing, which is really helping you work through and process and release those emotions, or at least understand those emotions that have been kind of wedged in you or stuck in you or warehoused in you for so long. But this is where we get to the soul healing part, that the third and the deepest form of healing is what I call soul healing. Because the essence of who we are has been bruised or fragmented or fractured or something, oftentimes when we've had those difficult experiences. But oftentimes, traditional therapy doesn't get you to that point. And so, what I try to do is help people understand where that deep bruising, where that deep wound comes from, and take you back through almost a timeline in this lifetime, to help you get to the point where you kind of identify the core of what those fractures or those dents and dings are. Now, I'm not talking about past life regression therapy, which is part of soul healing. I'm talking about literally going back, doing a timeline from start to finish meaning finishing now, as far as your timeline, going back as far as you can remember to the very first experience that you have felt fractured or hurt or wounded, or something that made you feel less than whole. And then creating a timeline, taking you all the way to now, and literally just putting notch marks on that timeline for you to understand, wow, at age 3 this happened, and that really kind of changed things for me. Or wow, okay, at age 9, at age 11, and really just identifying it. That's the intellectual type of healing. So just intellectually identify your timeline to go, wow, okay, these are all of the things that made me feel less than whole. Second wave of that is to go through and see what was the key emotion that was kind of either created and started during that time, or was there an emotion that was taken away? And I say taken away because there can be experiences where you are shut down, or just, I think in my case, my mother and my father were not tolerant of emotion at all. My mother could not handle emotion, and so it was one of those things where everything that was emotional was shut down. You just weren't allowed to really have an emotion in my family. And so for me, I've had to go back and kind of reclaim different parts of my life where I was shushed or shut down. So that's the kind of thing that I'm saying, that you can actually have an emotion that started. That's where your anxiety started. That's where your depression started. That's where your post-traumatic stress started on that timeline. Or when you realize, wow, I was never allowed to feel grief, or I was never allowed to feel anger, or I was never allowed to feel, whatever the emotion was. Excuse me. If you create that timeline, again, first of all, just identifying the key events, that's first level of healing. Second level of healing is identifying the emotion that goes with that. The soul healing part of that, you may or may not need someone to help you through that part, because it doesn't necessarily take someone who understands and does actual soul healing, but you have to have someone that understands how to help you extract and integrate that part of you that was disrupted at that point of your evolution or your part of your development. Now, I'm a big believer that There's lots of forms of therapy that can help you do that. So you don't necessarily have to go to a therapist, but I'm a big believer that life is too hard to do alone and that it is really important to not try to do it alone if there's some pretty big junctures in your life that need to be integrated. A lot of us like, oh, I could do that on my own. Well, you know what? That is ego talking, and this is a time to check ego at the door and basically allow yourself to have someone coach you through or spot you through that process so that you can move through that timeline and recollect the parts of yourself that are going to be key in you being able to move forward in the way that you want to move forward. And that is the integral part right there, is that those of us who feel stuck, those of us who feel like, wow, I'm not where I should be in life, or those of us who feel, oh, I'm broken, I'm always going to be broken. You know, a lot of times it's because we don't have these skills ourselves to take us through that timeline and help us really get through that point. Now, I was explaining this to a client yesterday and helping her understand, you know, my first notable time when I felt like, wow, life really changed was age 9 when my dad had his accident. And it basically rendered him disabled, and it was impossible for him to get back to where he was for many reasons. But that's when my childhood stopped. I don't remember much fun after that time. And I'm a highly responsible person. So I kicked in and started helping my mom right away. And I'm not saying I did everything, but it was one of those things at age 9, I kind of became a parentified child. I was helping her, I was helping him, I was doing whatever I could. Yeah, I was still going to school and all of those kinds of things. But as far as fun, I don't remember a lot of fun beyond age 9. I just don't remember that. So I had to go back and do a lot of reclaiming of childhood, which is why I play a lot now. I had to go back through other parts of my timeline and reclaim parts of myself so that I could get to where I am now. And I'm still, going through that process because occasionally I'll have a memory and I'll have to go back and reclaim that part. But this timeline can be very, very, very useful and powerful, not only for you to identify the Humpty Dumpty effect when things were broken apart, but it can also help you know how to collect those and what the key emotion or the key part of you that was left behind. Until you go through that process, you're not going to feel whole. And it's one of those things where, we can do some healing and think, wow, I'm so much better. But then this other stuff kind of starts to bubble up. So until we are basically whole, we've gone through each one of those key events in our lives and explored them, recollected those parts of us, we're not going to feel like we can fully move forward. And that's why I think it is so important to think about this as reclaiming your soul, reclaiming that sense of who you are, reclaiming that essence of you as a whole, pure light being and light person, so that you can move forward, because any stuckness, any wounding is always because there's parts of us that are left behind. So I just wanted to give you this tool, this timeline. And I also want to, again, encourage you very strongly to go to a therapist or go to someone. Sometimes a clergy can do it. Oftentimes they're not trained. But life coaches sometimes can, sometimes they're not trained. But I would definitely go to someone if you feel like, okay, I just can't do all of this on my own. And own up to it if you don't feel like you can. Don't try to do it on your own. But I think it's just a very powerful tool. And I've already had several clients telling me since my first video about reclaiming that they are working on this and they're realizing, wow, okay, this is the power of what I need to do to take me forward. And I'm all about soul evolution. I'm all about soul healing, which is all about helping us feel whole in each lifetime. So wanted to give you this tool, and I would love to hear how this has worked or is working for you. And, I'm happy to hear anything, but I think this is mostly so other people can hear how you're doing it as well. We've got 8.6 billion people on this planet, and all of us are broken in some way. So it's really important for us to do our work, do it together, and move forward as we really improve the state of this world. Have a great day. I hope this helps. Bye-bye.